Somewhere on this planet, right now, a wild animal is about to break every rule evolution ever gave it. Not bend the rule, break it completely. A mother is standing over her dying child. No time, no safety. Predators closing in from every direction that isn't toward us. And instead of vanishing into the trees, into the water, into the dark, she turns. She walks straight toward the one species. Every instinct in her body should be screaming at her to avoid us. The species that hunts her kind. The species that cages her kind. The species that has spent 10,000 years proving, again and again, that we are the most dangerous thing in almost every ecosystem on Earth. And she is handing us her baby anyway. This isn't one viral clip. This is a pattern. Documented, repeated, and once you actually look at it closely, deeply unsettling. Dolphins do it. Elephants do it. Wolves do it. Crows do it. Cats leave their newborns on strangers' doorsteps like some kind of silent offering. And every single time, the same impossible question sits underneath it, refusing to be ignored. Why would a wild animal trust its most vulnerable, most irreplaceable possession, its own child, to the one creature that should terrify it more than anything else in the wild? By the end of this, you will never look at your pet the same way again. Because the answer isn't sweet. It's calculating. And some of it should genuinely scare you. Let's get the uncomfortable part out of the way first. For 10,000 years, we have been the apex threat. We've hunted, trapped, displaced, and slaughtered nearly every species we've ever touched. If animals judged us the way they judge every other predator on the planet, the sight of a human should trigger total panic. Immediate flight. No exceptions. That is not what happens. Instead, in situation after situation, species after species, with zero shared biology and zero shared history, we see something that should not exist. Deliberate, targeted trust. And it doesn't show up randomly. It shows up at the single most dangerous moment an animal can experience. The moment its child's life is on the line. Think about that. If this behavior were random noise, it would scatter evenly across every kind of encounter. It doesn't. It clusters every time around the highest stakes moment possible. Which means something is being calculated. Something is being tested. And whatever the test is, some of us are passing it. Some of us are failing it too. And we don't always get told which. Start close to home. Start with something that might already be happening in your own backyard right now, without you realizing what it means. Feral cats have a long, documented history of delivering kittens, sometimes newborn, sometimes barely alive, directly to specific humans. Not random strangers. Specific individuals. The one who left food out at the same hour, every night, for months. The one who once pulled a thorn from a stray's paw, and was apparently never allowed to forget it. Here's the part that should unsettle you. That cat has been watching you. Cataloging you. Every movement, every sound, every reaction you've ever had around it, has been quietly logged into a mental file, marked either threat or safe. You didn't apply for this evaluation. You never knew it was running. And one day, without warning, a verdict gets delivered to your doorstep in the form of a helpless kitten. You passed a background check you didn't know existed. But somewhere out there, right now, someone else is failing one. And they have no idea. Now go somewhere you can't hide from the open ocean, where nothing about the encounter should favor us at all. Dolphins and whales have a well-documented history of approaching boats, specifically when a calf is injured. Not during ordinary encounters, only during emergencies. And these aren't panicked, chaotic interactions. They're deliberate. Fishermen and researchers have described a mother whale positioning her injured calf directly against the hull of a boat and holding there, not circling anxiously. Holding. Waiting. As if she is issuing a command with no language at all. Fix this, or we're both finished. Cetaceans already operate inside brutally cooperative social systems. Shared defense, coordinated rescue, group discipline. If a species already has the wiring to recognize, this one needs help, that one can provide it, then crossing a species line to make that same judgment about us isn't the leap it should be. But here's the detail that should chill you a little. Somewhere in the ocean, a species with a brain larger than ours, with memory systems we still don't fully understand, has been quietly running a threat assessment on humanity for generations, and in some populations, the verdict came back in our favor. In others, it didn't, and those populations don't come near boats at all. Ever. Birds are where this stops feeling coincidental and starts feeling like surveillance. Crows can recognize a single human face and remember it for years, not months. Years. They can hold what looks disturbingly like a grudge against someone who wronged them once, and they never let it go. And they can extend something that looks exactly like loyalty towards someone who helped them, exactly once, a long time ago. Now here's the part that should actually unsettle you at a deeper level. This judgment doesn't die with the crow that made it. There is evidence it gets inherited. A young crow, raised by a parent who marked a specific human as safe, will treat that same human as safe before ever interacting with them directly. which means somewhere out there, a verdict about you may already exist, passed down through a species you've never spoken to, based on a single interaction you may not even remember having. You are being discussed, in a language you will never hear, by witnesses you didn't know were watching, and the file on you is already open. Dogs take this further than any other species, because with dogs, the wiring isn't inherited fear breaking down slowly. It's built in from the start, on purpose, over 15,000 years. A mother dog who trusts her owner will carry newborn puppies to that person one at a time, and deposit them deliberately at their feet. Somewhere in canine psychology, humans were permanently classified as pack, and pack gets access to the young, no exceptions. But here's where it gets genuinely disturbing. That same ancient wiring, the mechanism that makes a domesticated dog hand over its puppies without hesitation, has been observed leaking outward into animals that were never domesticated at all. Wild wolves, coyotes, foxes. In regions with long histories of low-conflict human contact, these animals show unusually low fear responses around specific people. Not tame, not trained, just quietly recalibrated. A 15,000-year-old survival instinct, eroding in real time, one calm interaction at a time, in a species that has every biological reason to keep that instinct intact. Something ancient is being rewritten, and we may not fully understand what we're rewriting it into. Now the part that should genuinely disturb you. Elephants. Elephants carry the kind of memory most predators would consider a design flaw. They form bonds that last decades, and there are documented cases of elephant herds approaching specific humans, rangers, sanctuary workers with an injured calf, in a manner that looks less like an accident and more like a formal request. In several sanctuary cases, a mother elephant has presented an injured calf directly to a caretaker, stepped back, and waited sometimes for hours, clearly expecting intervention only a human can provide. Here's the detail that should sit with you long after this video ends. Elephants have been documented recognizing former caretakers after a full decade of separation. 10 years, no contact, and the response, when reunited, looks unmistakably like genuine emotional recognition. Which means somewhere, right now, there may be an elephant carrying a version of you in its memory, not a general impression of humanity. You, specifically, filed away, waiting for a moment you don't know is coming. At this point, the pattern is impossible to ignore, and it should be making you slightly uneasy. Every documented case shares the same 3 ingredients: exceptional memory, complex social cognition, and some history, even a small one, of low-threat contact with humans. This isn't random affection. This is a slow, cold, meticulously built cross-species trust ledger, constructed one encounter at a time, across generations, without our knowledge or consent. But not every version of this story is comforting. Some of it is closer to desperation than trust. A mother facing a predator, a flooding den, an injury she cannot treat, may simply move toward the nearest large, slow-moving shape that doesn't smell like a predator. That shape is often us. In a moment of total crisis, an animal's options collapse to almost nothing. And sometimes, trust the human isn't trust at all. It's simply the least terrifying option left on the table. And that should bother you more, not less. Because it means somewhere, in the split-second calculus of a dying animal's brain, we are being weighed against certain death, and sometimes, we are the safer bet. Given our history, we have not obviously earned that ranking. And yet the calculation keeps coming back the same way. There's a layer to this that almost never gets discussed, and it's the part that should make the hair on your arms stand up. Humans carry a specific, recognizable chemical signature: sweat, soap, food residue, whatever detergent happens to dominate that decade. Animals with strong scent memory, which is most mammals, can catalog an individual human's scent the exact same way they'd catalog a trusted member of their own species. Once your scent gets filed under safe, it can stay there for years, which means an animal you interacted with once, briefly, years ago, may still be carrying your exact chemical signature in its memory right now, waiting to retrieve it the instant it's needed. You have been cataloged by creatures that will never speak to you, in a system you will never see the inside of. And here's the piece that ties it all together, the piece that should genuinely disturb you. Research suggests distress calls across many mammal species share enough structural similarity that humans instinctively respond to them even the very first time we hear that specific sound. Faster heartbeat, immediate attention, an involuntary urge to act. Some researchers call this a leaky caretaking instinct, one that isn't cleanly limited to our own species. Which means on some level, we were built to respond to this. Built to be recruited, built to be tested, and somewhere along the way, word got out across the animal kingdom that the test is sometimes worth taking. Now the part that gets uncomfortably close to what we are, Wild primates, chimpanzees, bonobos, monkeys near long-term research stations have been documented bringing injured or orphaned infants toward familiar human researchers. Primates already practice alloparenting. Infants cared for not just by a mother, but by a wider circle of proven, trusted individuals. Extending that logic to a long-term, non-threatening human observer isn't the impossible leap it first appears. If a troop watches a specific researcher behave calmly and predictably for years, that researcher gets quietly absorbed into the troop's internal map of acceptable infant-adjacent adults. There is a name for the deeper theory underneath all of this, the idea that across multiple, independently evolved species, an individual animal can form something structurally close to an attachment bond with a specific human, not identical to a parent-child bond, but close enough that, in a crisis, the animal doesn't just tolerate that human. It seeks them out, the same way a frightened child runs toward a parent, instead of away from danger in a random direction. If that bond exists, handing over a vulnerable baby during an emergency stops being strange at all. It becomes exactly what you'd expect. A creature reaching, in its worst moment, for the one thing in its world that has been quietly classified as safe. And it is almost always the worst moment. Animals don't bring their young to humans to socialize. They bring them when something is visibly, unmistakably wrong. An injury, an entanglement, a wound, a problem their own species cannot fix. This isn't blind comfort around humans. It's a triage decision. They've identified a problem beyond their own ability, and identified one specific entity that has, in the past, solved exactly that kind of problem. That is a terrifyingly sophisticated cognitive maneuver, coming from a species whose entire evolutionary programming says, keep every stranger as far from your offspring as physically possible. But this trust is never universal. Persecuted populations, heavily hunted species, animals in high conflict zones show none of it. None. This behavior exists only in populations with a track record of low conflict coexistence, or the memory and cognition sophisticated enough to judge individual humans, rather than judge our entire species at once. They are not trusting humanity. They are trusting you, specifically. Based on evidence. Based on a file that has been quietly building, encounter by encounter, whether you knew it or not. And the file compounds. One human responds well to one crisis. The animal or its social group remembers. Later generations inherit a slightly lower baseline fear response. The cycle repeats, generation after generation, tightening slowly toward exactly the kind of moment this video opened with. It is not magic. It is not some animal secretly knowing, in some cosmic sense, that we're good. It is evidence, accumulating, silently, until the moment it gets cashed in. So why do animals bring their babies to humans? Not because we deserve universal trust from the animal kingdom. Our record is too inconsistent for that. It's because, across an enormous range of species and an enormous range of crises, individual animals have been building individual case files on individual humans for years, sometimes for generations. And some of us keep passing the test. Every quiet approach to an injured animal, every bowl of food left out on a cold night, every calm, careful reaction to something wild and frightened becomes a tiny entry in an evolutionary ledger we never agreed to keep. And once in a while, at the worst possible moment when a mother has run out of every other option, that ledger gets cashed in. And a human ends up holding a kitten, a calf, a chick, a tangled dolphin newborn, wondering how they became the chosen one. They weren't chosen randomly. They were selected, evaluated, approved. And here is the part that should stay with you longest. If some of us are being quietly approved, others are being quietly rejected. Right now, somewhere, an animal is watching a human it has decided not to trust. And we will never know we failed the test, because the test never announces itself. It only announces its verdict, and only in the rarest, most desperate moments. Every calm interaction is a deposit. Every careless one is a withdrawal. And you don't get a receipt either way. Rangers who've lived through the rare moments of approval describe them as some of the most meaningful experiences of their lives, proof that years of quiet, invisible trust building actually meant something on the other end. Conservationists now study these moments as more than heartwarming footage. They treat them as a report card, not on the animal, on us. So the next time you see a dolphin nudge an injured calf toward a boat, or a stray cat leave kittens on a stranger's porch, or an elephant herd standing in total silence beside a calf, waiting, don't file it away as a wholesome clip and scroll past it. File it away as a verdict, proof that on a planet full of species with every reason to fear us, a few of them quietly, conditionally, one encounter at a time, decided we were worth the risk. And somewhere, right now, something wild is watching you, deciding whether you still are,